Hello, everyone, and welcome to our combined Sunday school class from First Presbyterian Church here in Greensboro. We're so glad that you're able to join us as we gather again together online to worship God on this Sunday, December 6th. This is the second of the 4 Sundays of Advent, the time of anticipation and preparation for Christmas. I'm Lane Ridenhour. The Reverend Neil Dunnavant will be along with our Sunday school program in just a few moments. He is talking today on Christmas stories, biblical and beyond. But first, let's sing an Advent hymn together. People Look East, the Time is Near. It was written by Eleanor Farjeon, and it was first published in the Oxford Book of Carols in 1928. Miss Farjeon grew up in England, where she and her brothers used to love reading stories to each other, and they even wrote stories for each other, which was the beginning of a rather prolific writing career for her. We may not have heard of her by name in the United States, but we know one of her songs, Morning Has Broken, a popular hymn in our hymn book for years, but it was also repopularized in the 1970s when it was recorded by Cat Stevens. The tune that's associated with this hymn is a tune called Besançon, and it's actually the name of a city where this ancient French carol originated. People Look East is an instruction. It asks us to focus our scattered attentions into one place, into one focus of the direction of the east, the direction of the rising sun. And in the history of Christianity, it's also the direction of the coming of the Messiah. This joyful Advent hymn has the spirit of a Christmas carol, but it has an imaginative Advent text as well. I'll put the words up on the screen for you and invite you to sing along. People look east, the time is near.
People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able, trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today. Love, the guest is on the way. Birds, though you long have ceased to build, guard the nest that must be filled. Even the hour when wings are frozen, God for fledging time has chosen. People look east and sing today. Love, the bird is on the way. Stars keep the watch when night is dim. One more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today. Love, the star is on the way. Angels announce with shouts of mirth, Christ who brings new life to earth. Set every peak and valley humming with the word, the Lord is coming. People look east and sing today. Love, the Lord is on the way.
Hello to all my friends in the Agape class. I'm glad to be with you for a few moments today. I'm here at home in my sunroom on Watauga Drive. I miss you all terribly, and I know we're all tired of watching these videos. But I'll try to do my best this morning. I want to say just a few things about the Christmas stories found in the Gospels, and then I'm going to read a Christmas story that I wrote several years ago. But the two Gospels that have all of the stories of the birth of Jesus are in Matthew and in Luke. And some people say, well, Luke is the one that has the story of the shepherds, and Matthew is the gospel that has the story of the wise men. And Mark and John do not have any stories of the birth. Mark begins with Jesus as a grown man being baptized by John the Baptist in the River Jordan. And you remember the Gospel of John begins with those poetic words about in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the imagery of light and darkness. So one of the ones that I find the most interesting is Matthew chapter 2, about the wise men, or sometimes called the Magi, or astrologers. Now, when they use the word astrologer, they're not speaking of, like we think of astrology, like your sign, if you're Scorpio or that kind of thing. It's more about people who studied the stars. It might even be more accurate to call them astronomers. The best guess as to who these people were is that they were Zoroastrian priests, probably from the modern-day country of Iran. But that's still highly speculative. The Zoroastrian religion used to be quite dominant in the Middle East and in the Near East, but now, to my knowledge, there are only two pockets where it still exists, and there's a place in India around Bombay, or now called Mumbai, where there's still quite a few people who practice the Zoroastrian religion, and there are some still in the country of Iran, though it would be a very small minority. And of course, there's a lot of interesting things about this that have become legendary. For instance, the scriptures don't say that there were three men, but they had three gifts: the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And also, typically in a manger scene, you'll see that the wise men are there at the manger, but clearly from reading the Matthew text, they have appeared after Jesus and his family have gone back to their home in Nazareth, or perhaps we're still in Bethlehem, but they're certainly not at the manger on the night of his birth. But that probably doesn't really matter anyway. And then, of course, there's that wonderful scene where Joseph is warned to flee because Herod is threatened by the birth of this new king, and they flee to Egypt. And the one time I have been to Egypt, I actually saw the little church there that they believe is where perhaps Jesus and his family stayed while they were in Egypt. And then Joseph has another dream that Herod is now dead, and it's safe to return back home to Israel. So that's a really interesting story, and I commend to you those. In the Gospel of Luke, there are a number of stories that are really interesting, that are often overlooked and rarely read in church, about the birth of John the Baptist and about Elizabeth and Mary going to visit Elizabeth while she was pregnant with Jesus, and Simeon dedicating the child, and so forth. And so I commend those to you as well. But remember, all of the stories that we know of the birth, at least in the Gospels that are in the Bible, are in only Matthew and Luke, because Mark and John do not have any of them. Okay, so to finish off, I'm going to read, because I called this title Christmas Stories, Biblical and Beyond. So I'm going to read a story that I wrote quite a few years ago, and probably most of you won't remember it. And it's called Over the River and Through the Woods. Adam Clark was one of the lucky ones, and he knew it. An international correspondent with the Wall Street Journal. He had been working in Iraq for over a year and now he was coming home for Christmas. He thought of all the thousands of soldiers and military personnel who would not be coming home for Christmas, who would have to make do with a phone call or home or a package in the mail. Adam didn't want to feel guilty about being one of the lucky ones, but he did feel very grateful and planned to savor his 2 weeks in North Carolina before returning to the dust and doom of Baghdad in January. 43 years old and still unmarried, Adam had seen a great deal of darkness since he graduated from the UNC Chapel Hill School of Journalism in the 80s. He had covered the horrors of the horrors for the last 20 years, the Serbs killing the Muslim Bosnians, the Hutus and Tutsis in Rwanda, the Eastern Congo rebellions, international prostitution rings, crack cocaine addiction in the United States, and now the war in Iraq. As he flew into Greensboro on the connector flight from Dulles, he enjoyed looking down on the decency and order of Guilford County. Neatly planned neighborhoods, forest, lake, shopping centers, golf courses. What a difference from smoking, gutted, raped, pillaged, ugly, dangerous Baghdad. His parents, Jim and Claire, would be there to pick him up. He took a deep breath and tried to relax. It would be hard not to feel the jolt of culture shock. Rationally, he knew that Greensboro, too, had its problems: crime, unemployment, the economic near collapse of the furniture and textile industries, racial tensions, as well as some violence related to drugs and gangs. But compared to the places he had been, Greensboro seemed so very safe and comfortable and prosperous. Even the city's poorest neighborhoods looked to Adam neat, clean, orderly, and calm. Without wanting to, Adam often felt like he was in a dream world upon returning to the United States, almost like a fairyland, not quite real, a surrealistic land of nice cars and smooth roads and stores overflowing with extravagant, superfluous merchandise. But let's not go there, he told himself. He was here to enjoy his visit, to see his family and friends, to count his blessings, and most important of all, to visit Granny Clark for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day at her farm near Stoneville in Rockingham County. Adam had not seen his paternal grandmother for several years, and this was going to be Granny Clark's last Christmas on the farm. In February, she would be moving to Friends Home West. The farm was up for sale. It was a preemptive strike, her chance to get out while the getting was still good. Jim and Claire would worry about her far less, and they would be much closer for visits. Driving back from the airport to their home in Carlson Farms, Jim asked Adam how things were in Iraq. Before he could answer, Claire interrupted. I have decided we are not going to talk about Iraq on Adam's visit. It's a sore subject with me, and the less I know about it, the better. Honey, why can't the Wall Street Journal assign you to something safe, like the mortgage deficit crisis or the presidential election? Mom, I've already become a specialist in wars and catastrophes. That's what I do. But maybe in a year or two, I will write a book about all my experiences and settle down. Maybe I could get a job teaching journalism at UNCG or Guilford College. If some lunatic doesn't blow you up first or kidnap you or cut your head off like they did poor Daniel Pearl, she snapped. Okay, you're right, Adam said calmly. Let's not talk about it. How's Granny? Oh, she's so excited to see you, Jim said. She's been calling every day, talking about the menu for the Christmas Eve supper and this and that, and she keeps singing, over the river and through the woods, to my house you all will go. Does she still crow like a rooster at 5:30 in the morning? Adam asked, laughing. Of course, Jim said. I hope you don't have any fantasies about sleeping in on Christmas morning. You know she's just like a kid about opening the presents first thing. No, but I am pretty jet-lagged. It's 8 hours later in Baghdad right now. Back in Iraq, he would be hearing the call to prayer from the tower in the mosque, fighter jets flying over, helicopters hovering, Humvees barreling down the potholed road, and worse yet, bombs, shouts, cries for help, women wailing in the streets. "You can sleep late tomorrow," Adam's mom said gently. "We don't need to head up to Granny's until around 3 in the afternoon." "Oh," Adam replied, "I'm having lunch with Didier tomorrow. I hope that doesn't interfere with any of your plans." "Not at all," Jim said. Didier Chambeau was an old friend of Adam's from his days based in Kinshasa, Brazzaville. Didier, a Congolese, had been his translator and guide. They went through many dangerous situations together and formed a close bond. And through some help on Adam's part, Didier received refugee status and resettled in Greensboro under Lutheran Family Services. He was now driving a Bluebird cab and spending almost all his free time with his church, a small congregation of mostly Africans and Haitians who met in the chapel at First Presbyterian Church. Didier was like a brother, his closest friend, and the person in the world he trusted the most. He was also Adam's spiritual guide, the person he could call when the darkness was very dark indeed, the person who would pray with him over the phone and give him Bible verses to meditate over. He was grateful to Didier for pointing him to John 1, verse 5, "The light shines on in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Adam found himself always needing to focus on the light. He needed Didier to help him remember and believe that the light of God is never extinguished by darkness. And last but not least, Didier happened to be very funny. He could make Adam laugh with rolling on the floor, holding his stomach laughter, and that helped him more than anything else when he was sad or lonely. As they drove through the quiet streets leading to his parents' house, Adam enjoyed the lights of Christmas, particularly the new ones, now fashionable, the great colored balls suspended in the trees as if by magic. Coming from Iraq, these festive Christmas lights looked particularly beautiful and particularly hopeful. He even found himself thinking sermonic thoughts. After all, on Christmas Eve night, the light of God was born into the world, and the darkness will never overcome that light, not in Rwanda or Bosnia or Congo or Iraq or anywhere in the future where darkness will rage and bludgeon and capture people's souls. But Adam knew the truth all too well. For now there would still be darkness. Jesus said, "The light came into the world, but the people chose darkness instead." John 3, verse 19. For now the best of the light can do is flicker in the darkness, like candles burning in the dark sanctuary. We come to the manger to be blessed by the light, and then to carry that light out into the darkness. For Adam, working as he did in darkness, that had become his way of making sense of his on-again, off-again faith in God. God was and is mysterious and unfathomable, but God is the light in the darkness. The birth of Jesus is the bright flame of God's light, a meteor shower, northern lights, aurora borealis, and shooting star of light in the midst of deep darkness. It may not be good theology, but it was what kept him going as he reported on torture, murder, cruelty, pride, arrogance, cowardice, ignorance, and stupidity. The next day, Christmas Eve, was clear and bright. Adam slept well and long. At noon, Didier arrived in his Bluebird cab. Rather than go out, they made sandwiches and drank coffee in the kitchen and talked of old times and new times. Didier was doing well. He was getting married in the summer to a woman from Cameroon. Adam was invited to the wedding to serve as best man. As Didier was ready to leave, he said, "Adam, I have another Bible verse for you. It is from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined." When you go back to Iraq, brother, don't ever forget that the light is shining on you. When you are walking down the streets of Baghdad, people will see you glowing and wonder what's going on. Adam thought of the words of the Dylan Thomas poem, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." The poem was really about getting old and death, but the part of rage, rage against the dying of the light kept him strong in a rock as well. As Adam watched Didier walk to his cab, he saw light. It was a light shining down on him, and it was more than sunshine. He was sure of it. Later, Adam and his parents set out for Stoneville. Over the Dan River on Highway 220, through the woods to Granny's house they went. What a beautiful day, what a clear blue sky, the fields, the trees, the birds, the sun. As they drove up the dirt lane to the old farmhouse, Granny stood out on the front porch, clapping her hands, stomping her feet, and commenced to crow like a rooster with joy. Granny wore an apron, and her hands were white with biscuit flour. Through the woods at another house, a dog started barking. The family gathering was small this year. Claire, Jim, Adam, and Granny. Uncle Rupert was in Roanoke, having Christmas with his daughter and son-in-law. Adam's sister Jenny would be driving up from Charlotte the next day. So Granny invited some lonely neighbors to dinner, a widower named Clyde Hammer and 2 Mexicans living in a trailer who worked at a chicken farm. Clyde brought an angel food cake he bought at the Food Lion, and Horatio and Francisco brought Corona beer and cheese dip. Along with the baked ham, corn casserole, collard greens, sweet potatoes, biscuits, and pecan pie, they enjoyed a fabulous meal. They played rook and Chinese checkers, and Granny banged out a few carols on the old piano in the parlor. Adam stepped outside several times to suck in the cool, clean air and to admire the stars in the winter sky. The stars, too, were lights in the darkness, millions of them, so very bright, yet so far away. It is impossible to understand, really, how far away they are. Over the river and through the woods, churches gathered for Christmas Eve services. They read scriptures, sang carols, preached sermons, and lit candles, and they sang Silent Night to remind themselves that the light still shines in the darkness, and the darkness will never overcome it. Well, that's the end of that story. I hope you enjoyed that, and I wish you all a very merry Advent and Christmas season, and I hope to see you all in person very soon. God's blessings on you all.